Hey everybody, welcome back to the Diabetes Empowerment Summit. I am your host and co-host and founder of the Diabetes Empowerment Summit, Danielle Hargenrader, also founder of Diabetes Dominator Coaching and Love Yourself to Health group coaching membership. I am bringing you an amazing guest here with type 2 diabetes because we all need to know more about the representation in the community for type 2. I'm going to read you his bio and we're going to get right into the details. So Keith Crear has been living life on the sidelines, one shutter snap at a time, as a multimedia photojournalist. He enjoys the journey of life that has been paved and given, and he covers professional sports as a writer, photographer for sportsfusionlive.com, and creates promo content for SBNation as a digital media creator with the Canal Street Chronicles that covers the New Orleans Saints. So Keith, thank you very much for taking the time out of your day to share your experience, and welcome. How are you?
Great. How are you? How are you?
I'm very well, and I'm very excited to kind of get into this because we had a moment to chat before we got into the recording, and Keith is very forthcoming, which I think, as all of us, being vulnerable and open about our experience helps us and also helps other people who may be kind of standing back, and especially with type 2 diabetes, where there's just so much ridiculous and unfair and just untrue bias and stigma that goes with the disease. So I kind of just want to hear your experience. I found Keith on Beyond Type 2, right, which is a fantastic organization, and he was willing to come share. So kind of give us a little background about your experience, getting diagnosed, what that was like, what got you to go to the doctor, and really just your experience.
My experience, huh? Okay. So about 3 years ago, I was working for an ad agency that covers that takes inventory photos of automobiles at dealerships. How I found out I was diabetic was I was working one day, this heat of the summer, and I actually collapsed at work. Go to the ER, found out I was dehydrated, and that's when they kind of told me that, hey, look, how long were you diabetic? And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not diabetic. And the ER doctor was like, yes, you are. We pulled your blood and you're running a 295 right now. So he said that was the reason why you passed out, because you're dehydrated and your body's basically trying to shut down. So that point was an eye-opening experience because I didn't know, because I was always told that, I was pre-diabetic, but I really never pushed the threshold. But, being that I lost my job and I found a new job that paid me half of what I was making. So it was stressful, right? And then on top of that, trying to pay bills, and it was like, cool, you're just working, and then boom, here's this roadblock you get hit with. And from that point, it was a little struggle because it was depressing, because now you have this new thing on top of me, of course, I was at the time being overweight. So you automatically go into this mode like, oh, it's because I'm overweight, it's because I'm this, it's because I'm that. And so I started beating myself up, and I didn't have anybody to talk to. So it was all just a learning experience between me and my wife. So went home, after I got out of the ER, I went to my PCP, went home, I literally cleaned out everything in the cabinet and in the refrigerator.
Was that hard for you? Like, did someone tell you to do that, or did you just kind of I
did it because I always knew that diabetes ran in my family, along with a line of other ailments such as high blood pressure, cholesterol, stuff like that. So I didn't want to be like the other family members that just said, screw it, I don't care. It's life. And
break the cycle. Yeah.
Break the cycle. Mm-hmm. So I went home and just literally cleaned everything out. My wife was mad, but
but I bet she was happy because she wants you to be healthy. So right. She sounds pretty great.
Right. So, and that's kind of when everything started. That was the beginning of the learning process of type 2 diabetes.
And so you say a lot of things there that are important. One is you started feeling that kind of shame and blame so for me, having been coaching for 10 years, I've worked with lots of people with type 2, and kind of one of the very first things that we need to work on is getting past that, because what it is a major block, right? When you're sitting in a place where you're feeling guilty and shameful about your own behavior, meanwhile, nobody's probably talking about what you said, the massive influence that the genetic predisposition to having type 2 diabetes plays in this role, right? It's not just one reason why type 2 diabetes begins to express itself. There are many. So how did you get from the point where you were in that place of kind of sadness and blame and guilt? And how did you get to where you are now? Was there any one particular, practice, or so was it, self-care of some sort, or learning, or what was the kind of all of the things that helped you get past that?
Basically, it was a learning curve because my mom works in healthcare. She actually opens clinics across, the southern part of the United States. She's currently in Tennessee right now. But it was actually talking to her, and because she suffers from fibromyalgia and high blood pressure, and then on her side of the family, the diabetes runs rampant. So I was talking to her, and then having come into that roadblock with my PCP and a lot of physicians, because then what it did was having those, I'm not going to say argumentative conversations, but it was having those hard conversations that they didn't want to have they didn't want to talk about, that made me go out and research more. So like my first PCP that I was talking to, he automatically wanted to put me on insulin. And I was reluctant about it. And so I had scheduled an appointment with a diabetic specialist. So before I saw her, I had saw a nutritionist. Same thing with the nutritionist. It was a roadblock. It was, you got to follow this chart. You got to eat from these food groups and X, Y, and Z. And it was never a really hard conversation about understanding glucose levels to the point of in relation to eating. It was just, hey, you're eating too much sugar, processed sugar, you're eating this, and that's it. You need to break it down like this. So when I finally saw my diabetic specialist and I told her about my PCP wanting to put me on insulin, she was like, before we go there, let me take your reading. She took my reading in office. She pulled a 141. I never forget this. She pulled a 141. And she asked, why did he want to put you on insulin? And I was like, I don't know, but I didn't feel comfortable with it. So at that point, she was like, I'm glad you did it, because she said the moment you go on that insulin, that's not real insulin, your body tends to shut down and not produce whatever insulin it's already producing. Even if it's maybe slowly producing insulin, it won't produce it anymore because an outside entity has came in and taken over, and it's operating better than what your body's producing. So it was like, okay. So when she sat down and explained to me about the perspective of eating in relation to glucose levels, it totally made sense. So that's why I love Dr. Lori here at Kelsey Sibo, because she explained it to me. And it was at that point I understood about consuming carbs, complex carbs, processed sugar, natural sugars in relation to managing and maintaining the glucose levels.
Yeah.
So with that, it was going forward and researching for myself and saying, okay, what foods kind of help me maintain, and how do I even test my sugar, or how do I even, go on about a daily life, because we've been told, and even in the media and even on the web, it's like, oh, if you type 2 diabetes, that means because you're overweight, you're fat, this and that, and all the negative stigmas that come with being diabetic, because particularly in the Black community, it's one of those things like, there's a joke, oh, you're going to eat that, you're going to get the sugars.
Yeah. Yes, I'm familiar.
So it was that learning curve of trying to literally tear down everything that you've learned as far as eating and what you've been told in your own community, and then relearning a new process and a new set of steps to kind of keep you going forward and maintaining.
Yeah, no, that's so much good stuff in there. And so what would you say was maybe one of the biggest aha moments or lessons that you learned in your process of kind of breaking down, as you said, the old kind of paradigm of how you were feeding yourself, how you're fueling your body, to how you're doing it now? What was kind of one of the biggest lessons? And also, how did you do it in a way that felt doable? Because a lot of people want to change the way they eat, they want to change the way they move their bodies, but they find it to be what I call, this is the way I kind of say, what I think is a blessing. We get to do this. Like, this is an opportunity that we've been given to change our lives, but they kind of categorize it as a burden. So kind of how did you change that burden into a blessing in your own mind while you were learning, and what was kind of the biggest aha moment with food?
With food, it was knowing that you can still eat what you normally eat. You just have to proportion it You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, upon the research, you kind of realize that in America, our portions of food are like massive compared to everywhere else.
Yes.
And it's like, you know, when you look at it, and like I said, being diabetic, it's been, you know, I call it, everybody thinks I'm crazy, but I call it a blessing, because you kind of sit back and you look at things totally different now when it comes to food consumption, even down to exercise. Like, all that kind of comes into play. How I managed to do it was when I cleaned out my cabinet and refrigerator, it was an opportunity to learn a new way of eating. So I went vegetarian for like 60 days. Okay. And then you realize, like, hey, a lot of this food is not bad, you know?
Exactly. It actually tastes good.
It tastes good, you know, and again, it's also a good thing that I had a diabetic specialist to tell me, like, hey, look, you can eat these things. You just have to eat it in, you know, certain levels of moderation.
Yeah.
And then in a matter of maintaining it, it just physically, like I made a post about it on Instagram, it's like literally writing down your goals for each day to help you, you know, manage what you consume. It's hard, don't get me wrong, but it helps, because if you just flying blindly every day, you'll wind up flying off course, and then you wind up getting something that you're not supposed to be getting, and then you'll spike.
Yep.
So
absolutely. Yeah. And like, what gets measured gets managed, you know, as cliche, you know, a self-care or personal development statement as that is, it's cliche because it's repeated through time, because it's true. If you actually take your time and focus on anything, it will grow, whether it's good, bad, or otherwise. So if you're taking the time to focus on what you want each day, now that's like a whole other self-care tip that I think is incredible, both for diabetes and also for every other area of life. Like, right, so if you take a moment in the morning and you write down, what do I want to accomplish today? And I would say even a little bit further, to do it from a place of compassion, do it from a place of love versus kind of on hating on yourself. Like, well, if you don't get this done today, you're a failure. It's like, no, this is what I'd like to get done today, and here's why. And then kind of move down. Did you always do that kind of daily check-in with yourself goals-wise professionally or anything before you started doing diabetes, or did diabetes bring that habit into your life?
Well, in the job that I have, right, you had to do it, right? Because you had to create a shot list. You had to map out, like, what were you going to do before you step foot on the sideline. So when I didn't do it when I had the diabetes at first. It was just like, I was just trying to consume information, try everything, and then see what worked. And that really didn't help, because it was a matter, I got a whole bunch of information and I didn't know what to do with it. So it was like, over time, it probably took me about a good solid year, maybe year and a half, before it clicked, like, hey, Keith, step back. When you get up in the morning, check your number, and that should be your operating number for the rest of the day. So if you got up and you pulled a 170 or 175 or 180, then you know that day there's certain things that you can't eat, because you want to make sure that you get your numbers down closer to the lower 100s as much as possible. So whether that meant fully going out in the mornings, instead of doing 30 minutes, maybe an hour or 45 minutes of exercise, and then, you know, managing the meals after that, or just managing the meals and kind of breaking up an hour regimen of exercising over the course of the day, just to try to manage it. But no, I didn't learn that organization piece for diabetes probably like a year later. So yeah.
Oh, good. Well, I'm sure it's been very helpful for you. And you mentioned exercise too, which you did mention, you know, kind of in your Beyond Type 2 blurb. And so what is your preferred method of exercise? Because I just want to know, because I think people have this idea that exercise has to be this like crazy, intense, like overwhelming, panting for breath in order to be helpful for blood sugars, in order to be meaningful for your health, which I disagree with, but I'm not trying to take it away. If you're a CrossFitter, go ahead. And I used to be, but now I always say the best, I say personally, for me, in my experience and from coaching so many people, that walking is the best exercise for lowering your blood sugar, period.
Yes.
We didn't talk about this. You're agreeing with me though.
I'm agreeing with you
Okay.
1000%. Oh my gosh. Like, you know, and again, like I said, when you find out and you get hit with that information, a lot of things start flowing through your head, and it's like, you know, okay, I'm not exercising enough. So, you know, you go out, you get a gym membership, and you run into a gym and you're doing everything you possibly can. You're lifting weights, you're on a treadmill, and you're doing a CrossFit, you're doing this, and it's like, and I'm not gonna say it doesn't help, but your body it doesn't really get acclimated to all those exercises. So again, it's the importance of having a a professional in your corner that's like, no, slow down. Let me tell you, just take it easy because you can manage it. Just walk. And that's what my diabetic specialist, Dr. Lord, told me. Just walk. Spend 30 minutes a day in the morning, walk. When you have a break on your at lunch or whatever, you just walk. Get up from your desk for 10 minutes, go walk. Yep. And it's just that simple. And so, yes, I totally agree with you. Walking is probably the best exercise for managing the type 2.
And I think something else that you said is extremely important that I want to just reiterate. It doesn't have to be that full hour at a time. You said throughout the day, which I really liked, because with exercise and blood sugar management, it's frequency over duration in my experience. So if you do 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, 10 minutes here, that all matters. It actually really, really does. And I think we as humans get this hang up in our mind where we're like, well, if it's not an hour or it's not this some preconceived, randomly chosen amount of time, it does, I might as well not do it. And so I just want to kind of say, you agree, right, that 10 minutes.
I agree. I agree. You know, and because again, you know, like I said, when you're on the net and you're on the web and you see all this information and you get all this negative stuff coming at you that's popping up, you tend to say, you know what, I'm just going to try everything at once, and you get burnt out or you get frustrated because nothing's working, or that's all you see, that nothing working. You know, so it becomes stressful. But again, like I said, walking, I'm on point with that one.
Good, awesome. So we talked a little bit too before we got into the recording about medication, and you talked about your insulin. So are you still managing with oral medication and food and exercise? Is that where you are now, several years later into your journey as well, or has anything changed?
I never got on the insulin. When I first started, they had me on metformin. It was like 500 milligrams twice a day. And then when I saw my endocrinologist, he had me on Januvia. Yeah. 100 milligrams of that. That was like 4 times a day. And I know we talked before off camera about the negative things that come about with this, right? The frustrating piece about the medication part is the side effects that tend to occur while you're on it, right? Yeah. Like even with metformin and Januvia, like my ex-endocrinologist, when he gave me the Januvia, he was just testing, because when I went into his office, saw him, he pulled my numbers, he pulled a 138. He sat there, he scratched his head because he couldn't figure out, well, wait, you don't have high blood pressure, you have perfect cholesterol levels, your ketones are fine, what's going on? And he was like, well, maybe you're not 100% diabetic. And I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. So when he told me, so, well, I'll kind of put you on the Januvia as you kind of see, and I'm like, don't test me on medications.
Using you as a guinea pig.
Yeah. So that's when I politely stepped away. So from that point, it was just maintaining with the metformin, exercise, and kind of doing a little holistic here and there. I know some people kind of frown upon it.
Not here.
So,
Speak on the holistic side, please, Keith. Please.
Great.
Please.
So I know the battle between the medical field and holistic eating and, talking to a bunch of people, and you kind of realize that when you think about food as an energy source and that what is here on earth, that actually not is just a food source, but it's actually a healing source too, right?
Yes. Please go on.
So,
yes.
And it's where when people look at me, they're like, wait a minute, all right, I'm 6 foot, I'm 300 pounds. And they're like, wait a minute, why are you talking like that? You're supposed to be talking about beef and pork. And I'm like, it's great, but I don't eat it like that, So now I'm like, hey, look, spinach, cinnamon, turmeric, cumin, vegetables, all, and they're like, and you realize the effects of what it does to the body. And I remember having a conversation with one of my coworkers, and I said, look, think of it like this. I said, have you ever gone to the gas station and you put premium gas in your car? And he was like, yeah. I said, you see how it runs smoothly, it doesn't hiccup, it doesn't sputter. I said, then you go back and you put 89 or 87 octane in your car, then it's like, your check engine light kind of flickers on or it sputters off at the light. He was like, yeah. I said, think of it think of the gas the same way with food. If you go in, you eat a greasy burger, I indulge, but you go and you eat a greasy burger or whatever, your body performs differently as opposed to eating a salad or eating more vegetables and that, it performs more on a premium level. But that also affects everything on the inside of how your body kind of breaks everything down and uses it and stores it for energy. Being that and more or less on that type of perspective of life, that's how I'm kind of managing my diabetes now, because I've tested it for me, and I know it doesn't work for everybody, and I have to make sure I reiterate that it's not for everybody. But when I took myself off of the metformin for about a month, and I started saying, you know what, let me just eat a little bit better, let me exercise a little bit more, and let me just see what happens. When I saw my numbers kind of balancing out, that's when I knew what I needed to do for myself to help maintain. Yeah. Even though I was on the lower end of metformin, that told me that my body really didn't need the meds. It just needed a readjustment and a realignment on how I was doing things with my body, if that makes sense.
It makes all the sense in the world. And I mean, honestly, if anybody that's watching this that knows me, and, they would like, did Danielle source this guy like from some secret? Because you're literally speaking. So I have a degree in nutrition science, which I say helped me about this much in my journey with actually understanding nutrition. No offense to college, not, but for me, I learned all I needed to learn about nutrition from my own self-experimentation and from working with other human beings that blessed to have trusted me as their guide on their journey. And you said something so important, and that's kind of thematic throughout all the interviews we've done so far here, is that there is no one size fits all box that any person with any type of diabetes can just fit themselves into, and then all of a sudden it's just going to work out the same. And I'm really glad you kind of mentioned the fact that you were willing to experiment, because I find that to be one of the most empowering things, to come at your self-experimentation from a place of curiosity, not anger, not, I hate my body. Why is my body doing this to me? What's wrong with me? But no, I'm curious as to see this amazing machine that God gave me. How can I better use it to serve, right, in my life?
Right.
And the holistic nutrition part, food is fuel, as you said. The earth grows out everything that we need to survive. And I became vegetarian many years ago. I went, I'm almost 38 years old. I have been vegetarian for probably about 4 years now. But even before that, I was kind of, teetering on the edge. But I kind of went fully vegetarian years ago. And I can say with total certainty, this holistic approach is the one that heals us, as you said. And that kind of woo-woo mentality, which I always say I'm half science, half woo-woo. I'm right there in the middle. I will woo-woo you all day, but I will back it up with science, because it's true, and that's how that works. So it's beautiful that you were willing to experiment with yourself that way, in such a gentle, kind of curious way, and then you found your way here. And so you're off the metformin now.
Yes, I'm off the metformin, and that was I know we said it off camera. That was the battle between me and the endocrinologist, right? Mm-hmm. Because on the metformin, like I talked about the side effects, which
gastrointestinal stuff.
Yeah, so my kidneys were feeling like they were trying to jump out of my back.
Wow, that sounds horrible.
And I went to explain it to him. He was like, oh, that's because you were already in kidney failure. And I was like, well, wait a minute. I didn't have that issue before, but I'm having it now. So again, that was kind of one of the things where I said, let me just pull back. Because his response to me was, when I told him I was going more or less on a holistic and a vegetarian style diet, he was like, oh, you're going to be one of those patients. So I was like, good day to you, sir.
You were nicer than I would have been. That's all I can say.
Nope. So, I don't know if you want me to mention it, but there's certain things that I do take, like I said, black seed oil, cinnamon. Like cinnamon and turmeric are like my best two right there.
I take turmeric every day as well.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Yeah. So it's like, and then moringa. Like I said, I just kind of just use like like I said, I research, and I've done a lot of research as far as like what to use and what to eat and what to consume. And like I said, me and my wife are actually slowly going towards being vegetarian 100%. And because like one of the main things about being diabetic, I know all what it affected, right? They told me that I could never have kids. Could never have kids.
They told you that when you were
Yeah.
diagnosed?
No. This was before. And then
And
then when they said, well, you're pre-diabetic,
Oh, okay.
said, well, if you let your diabetes get out of control, you won't be able to have kids because it affects every aspect of your system. So when I went in for a test to do a count, my count was low. So it was like, all right. And again, you get to the point where you're depressed, you feel like you're knocked down, everybody's walking over you. And I just said, screw it. I accepted it. Fast forward, 2019, after 2 years of, feeding your body differently, your body has a chance to reset itself and start functioning as it does. It will wind up, me and my wife had a baby boy this year.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. So it's those things that kind of say you're on the right track, right? Because I don't feel like if I was on all these medications, it would have ever happened. Yeah. And even when I talked to my diabetic specialist, Dr. Lori, I told her, I was like, I don't think if I was still on the metformin and the Januvia, I would have had a baby boy. Yeah. I think my system, like, it was slowly would affect of everything, and I wouldn't have had the opportunity to be in this position. So with me eating right and eating different, I think that changed the course of everything, and here we are. So
that's so beautiful, and we didn't talk about that also. That's just like, for me, when people achieve that kind of thing that is very important to their heart and soul, like it just brings me joy when I see other people joyful. So I'm really happy that happened for you, and that you were. First off, I want to say that you were willing to walk away from your doctor. This is another thematic kind of thread that's woven through a lot of these interviews, and that I have been saying for years now. Doctors are service providers, right? A lot of people have this idea in their mind that doctors are the end-all, be-all, kind of almost godlike, whatever they say has to be the right thing because they're the doctor. So of course they have to know. But the thing is, you're spending a couple hours per year with them. Like, they don't actually know. So I wonder, did you always have that attitude? Because I think that attitude of the doctor and myself are having a two-way relationship. This is not kind of like a teacher-student relationship. It can be, but you could just as well as the patient be the teacher. So it's a two-way relationship. Did you always have that viewpoint, or did that change as you realized and got more in tune with your own body's signs and signals that it was sending you?
I never was always like that, because again, it's like, my mom works in healthcare, and so it's like, you always thought, okay, well, she works in healthcare services. She's a provider. It's what the doctor says. And that's what it is. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. But then when we had our first talk after I got diagnosed with diabetes, she showed me a different side, and she was like, look, just I'll be honest with you. A lot of these hospitals, a lot of doctors, they're basically on the payroll. And I don't mean that from the hospital standpoint. I mean that from the vendor standpoint. She said vendors come in all day, every day. Hey, try this out on your patients, see if it works, and that's where the experimentation kind of comes in at. So with her opening my eyes to that, and actually her even telling me that, because I know sometimes that's a, kind of like a no-no, but it was when my endocrinologist at the time experimented with the Januvia, that was the eye-opening experience. Like, oh, this is happening to me right now. Like, he just literally told me that, oh, I didn't need it, but he just wanted to see what was going on. I'm like, why are you doing that? So that's where I said, let me just kind of experiment for myself and see what these avenues will lead me to as far as changing, a lot of how I ate, how I exercised, because I was 425 pounds.
Wow.
My biggest. And then now I'm like right at 300. So, my mom, when we talk to each other, she's always like, Keith, I'm so proud of you. She said, because, because one of the things I talk about too, the blessing with being a type 2 diabetic was that I got to see a smaller version of myself that as I was growing up, they always, oh, well, you're just big bone, don't worry about it. And you kind of just accept it. and you just kind of accept it and like, okay, I'm gonna be the big guy all my life, right? But now I get to see a smaller version, and when people see me, like, man, you lost a lot of weight, and so that's the good thing. That's the blessing behind it. But again, it also helps me maintain and continue to lose weight with being diabetic.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's, you gotta look at the positive and the negative and start weighing out the positive. So
and start focusing more energy on the positive, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's so since you have mentioned the holistic side of things, and a lot about this kind of event in and of itself is about the mental and emotional side of managing a chronic disease. And so what do you do? We'll call it self-care, whatever you want to call it, but I call it mental and emotional hygiene, kind of comparing it to, like, look, we brush our teeth every day physically. We don't think twice about it. We know that if we don't do it, we feel like garbage. But what are, and I would say for you, clearly walking is one of them. But are there any other kind of mental and emotional care practices that you've implemented into your life to kind of help you manage the kind of constant, need to be on top of the disease?
I look at where I'm at now with what I do in my profession, right? Because I never would have thought that I would ever get to this point. And people always say, oh, you have these aspirations and dreams and to do things. I look at being able to pick up my camera bag every day and go shoot sports, or to get a request in my emails from my boss over at SBNation, say, hey, look, I need a promo video for Drew Brees. It's little things like that. It's like, I'm here, I'm able to do that. So that's what kind of keeps me mentally going, right? Even more so now is being able to wake up and see my 5-month-old son. So, so it's like, I know I have to continue on, doing things the right way so I can be there for him, and then passing on this new way of living to him so he doesn't have to deal with the issues that I dealt with growing up.
Yeah, so that's the kind of full circle. I always talk to people who are parents, and I say, I'm not a parent by choice, and God bless every one of you out there who has the urge to do so. I had to come to terms with, I just don't have the urge, and that's okay. That's fine. But kids, having worked with tons of families over the years, kids will do what you do, not what you say. Period. Like, there's just no argument. There's no tonality that you can put into your voice, or parameters that you can set up. If you're not doing the thing and showing by example what you want your kid to do, it's highly unlikely that they're just going to just say or do what you say versus what you do. So that is, I would find, to be one of the greatest motivating factors, and clearly it's working for you. But you were working for it before your son came in, so it's kind of just a beautiful way to keep it going.
The other thing is literally, and it's just taking it one day at a time, and like, really just one day at a time, because I had to look at it as like, I'll be 42 next month, and I look at the 40 plus years of bad eating. Well, I'm gonna say 40, change that. 38 years of bad eating is not going to change overnight, just because I'm, diabetic. So I have to say, you know what, I got to take the next 38 years basically and continue to eat right to change that shift in how I eat and manage my diabetes.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. Everything you're saying, I feel it, and I can feel your energy, and your vibe is just so, you're just genuine, and you care about your health, and it's beautiful. And I hope that people out there are seeing, like, look, this man got diagnosed and he's out there doing his thing and experimenting, and you can too, right? It's one day at a time. And oftentimes we talk about one blood sugar check at a time. Sometimes each day, that's kind of all we can manage, and that's okay, right? Just blood sugar to blood sugar. That's okay to be that way as well. So yeah, I mean, I could talk to you a lot longer, but is there any other, words of wisdom or kind of whatever you'd like to say to the people who are out there watching who maybe, just struggling or, want to know more from you?
Just don't let it control you to the point where you're doubting yourself or you're in depression. Look at it as a new journey on how to be a better you, basically. Especially if you're overweight, because I know there's that connotation too. If you're overweight, that just look at the process of seeing a different you and a different person, and we all know the old saying, live life to the fullest, stress-free, love, You know, that's basically it. You know,
agree.
I mean, that's really what you have to do. You have to be positive every day. You know, I know it's hard now with this whole pandemic stuff and all the social stuff going on, but you still have to you just have to live it one day at a time, be positive, think positive. You know, we have a thing in the film and photography thing is bad in, bad out. So if you record bad footage, you're going to get bad post.
Yeah.
Good in, good out. So
yeah.
you soak it all in, soak all the good stuff in, and then you'll project all the good back out. Super simple.
Could not say it better myself. I genuinely appreciate you taking the time to share. Sometimes I invite people on that I haven't spoken to, and this is one of those cases, and I go with my gut. I'm a very big intuitive, energetic follower. And when I saw your picture, I was just like, I need to interview this guy. I'm not sure why, but now I know why. You're amazing, very inspirational, and I genuinely thank you for taking the time to share with the audience and also just to being vulnerable to share your story. It matters. It's helping people, regardless of whether you're seeing it happening or what, but I can tell you for sure it's helping people. So thank you. And for everyone else out there, I hope you enjoyed this interview. Any links that Keith has given me for you to find him or his media company or anything will be directly below this video. And stay tuned for some more great interviews. And thank you so much, Keith, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Have a good one.